Okay, hello everybody. I was asked to make a tutorial video about how to use and set up Soundbox, but what I thought I'd do is I'd step back a bit and make a video showing how to set up a computer in the first place, including setting up Soundbox at the end. So to start with, let's run through the equipment you will need for this. So first of all, obviously, you're going to need a computer. Now this can be anything from a cheap second-hand laptop all the way up to a full-blown PC tower. My suggestion is to get something that is A, low powered to use less electricity, and B, quiet. That's most important. This is going to be running during a meeting, so the quieter the better. What I would recommend is getting what is called an NUC or NUC, which is very small and silent PC. There are many options, but here's what I have found. As you can see, if we go to the next image, it's got all the ports you need. These are on the front, this is the back, and most importantly it's got two video outputs, DisplayPort there and HDMI, and plenty of USB sockets that you're going to need. The two video outputs is so you can run the sound desk screen from one of them and the projector and or any TVs you've got in the hall from the other. Ideally, a PC you get would have three outputs, and if you had a normal desktop tower, then a lot of graphics cards in those towers do have three outputs, and that makes life a bit easier later on. So the next thing you're going to need is a monitor. Again, obvious, but what I would recommend is a touchscreen one. That way the sound desk operator has got less to learn, so less training, and it's more intuitive. And they won't need to use the keyboard and mouse. Again, here's what I have found. This, to me, struck the right balance between usability and size. You don't want something too big, but you want something to be easy to use with your fingers, and that seems about right to me. Next, you're going to need an audio input device. Now, all PCs have got sound adapters in them and audio inputs and outputs on them, but a lot of them use the 3.5mm type connections that you get at the end of small headphones, for instance, and those connections can be quite noisy. There can be some hum on them, and also a lot of computers, including the one I showed you earlier, have one for input and output. It sort of shares it with different pins inside, and they can be really awkward to have it a sound coming in and sound going out at the same time. You get a lot of interference and it's awkward with adapters and things. So what I would recommend is get an audio input device which is separate from the PC. You lose the interference, but you also get the right connections. This is what I have found, and this is what's recommended by a lot of people. As you can see, it's got input here and output, and they're the standard phono connections that you get on the back of most mixers at the hall, so it's nice and easy to connect, and there's hardly any interference on that as well, and it's pretty cheap, so it doesn't add much to the price. Next thing, if you got the NUC computer I showed you earlier, an extra video output device. Like I say, if you've got three outputs on your computer that you're going to use already, then this won't be needed. But if you've only got two, or if you've only got one, you might need two of these. This way you can run a second or third screen is what I'm talking about here. The third screen is what you would run a timer screen on, so you can have that at the back of the hall so the brother giving the talk can see how much time he's got left. You don't have to do this. You can run it from a separate device like a tablet or phone on the platform itself. There are pros and cons to both of those ways of doing it, but this is what I have found, and this connects to the USB 3 port of a computer and outputs to a VGA monitor. You can get them from USB 2, the older type, but they tend to be a little bit more expensive, 2 or 3 times more expensive, because they're slower, so they need more power in them. But this one works well. And obviously, to go with that, you will need a small monitor to connect to it. You won't need a touchscreen this time, just any old monitor. You might find there are brothers in the hall that might be able to donate an old one for you, because it's hardly doing anything. It just needs to be a fairly small, unobtrusive monitor that you stick at the back of the hall or on the wall, even if you can get an adapter. Next, you're going to need an HDMI splitter. This way, what you this again, you might not need this actually, but what this does is if you send the output to the projector, you can also have separate screens, maybe at the side of the hall if your hall's large enough that you're going to need those extra screens, or perhaps if you run a screen in a second school that you want to have the same video playing that you have on the projector. This is what I have found, and what this does, it splits the same signal 4 ways. You see 1 by 4, and the same image or video or whatever is displayed on all 4 screens. The thing you've got to make sure on this is that all the screens and devices can output the same resolution. That shouldn't be a problem because the projectors most halls use is quite low resolution. It's good enough, but it's not particularly high, so any TV screen you add as extras from the side of the hall or in the second school should be able to run that resolution, but you just need to make sure. Resolution, by the way, is the pixel count, so 1000 and something by 1000 something. You get that on every screen. And not lastly, but you're going to need, don't forget, a keyboard and mouse. You won't need this very often, but there will be times when you do, when you need to do any maintenance, or if something goes wrong and a brother needs to be fixing it. The touchscreen can do most things, but sometimes you're going to need a keyboard and mouse. And what I have found is this one. It's pretty small, as you can see. There's no number pad on the side. It's compact and there's no wires, so it can just be hidden away when not in use. But there are loads available, but I thought this was quite good value, and you can get it in white and black, and it's pretty cheap. Now lastly, leads. You're going to need all the HDMI leads and audio leads that you need to connect everything with. The HDMI lead is the important one. If you're going to run the projector, and if that's a long way away, if you're going to have to route it all the way around the walls and through the ceiling, if it's a particularly long HDMI lead, you're going to need what's called an active HDMI lead, so the signal isn't lost. They're a little bit more expensive, but they save any hassle, then you don't get any interference. But then you need to connect everything. I'm not going to actually show you physically how to do that, but what I will do is what I've got is an image which gives you the rough idea of how you're going to connect everything, and I'll leave it on the screen and you can pause the video and have a look at it yourself. Okay, so now we're going to need to go and get and install Soundbox. So here's my Windows screen, and what you're going to need to do is open your web browser and go to this address, which is cv8.org.uk/soundbox. You can put the www at the beginning or not, it doesn't matter, it works either way. And then you go to the Soundbox website, and what you're going to need to click to download it is up here. There have been updates, quite a lot of updates in the last few days and weeks, and there was a testing version or beta version down here, but that's now been all sorted. All the updates have been put into the main release, so just click that to download the latest version and just wait for that to download. You've probably installed things before, and when you're using Microsoft Edge like this one, you can just click run, but if it was a different browser, you just need to locate this file that's been downloaded to your computer. It's normally in the downloads folder, but let's run that, and you get the standard user account control security option. Just click yes, and then choose your language. There's quite a lot of languages now, but we'll have English. Okay, and then this is installing any program. It's just click next a few times. You can read through each one if you want, but just leave the defaults. It all seems to work well. Now I choose this bit to create a desktop icon, that way you can start it easier later. And off it goes, pretty quick. So let's close this and leave that tick, so it'll launch Soundbox now. Now, because this is the first time it's been run on this computer, it's saying there are no song files. So you need to get those song files. Now there are two ways of doing it. You can go to the jw.org website, and in publications there's audio down the bottom, and you can download all the songs. Now we're being recommended to use the orchestral versions of the songs now, so download those, but they aren't orchestral songs for everyone now yet. They haven't quite done them all, so you need to download the piano ones as well. And don't forget all the new ones as well, the up to 150. But what this program can do is do it yourself. But if you do do it manually, download them from the site, you need to put them into this folder. And to get to that folder, the easiest way is from this window, click that, and there it is. And you can just drag them into that folder from where you download them. But if you look, this is where it is. It's in C, Program Data, Soundbox and Songs. It's sometimes difficult to get to that because this is actually a hidden folder. So it's easier just to click that than try and search for it on your hard disk. So let's close that, but let the program do it itself. That's what this button down here is. It goes to the website, downloads all the songs it needs, and sorts itself out. It's brilliant. It works every time, but it does take a while. You're downloading about 1 GB of data, so let's get that going. And off it goes. Now what I will say is this window is the same one that you bring up when you want to update the songs later on if they release new versions. I'm not sure they are. I think 150 is where it's going to end, but I don't know. They may release more, and if so, you need to go to the update songs option, which I'll show you later. But in the meantime, I'll speed this up because this takes quite a while. Okay, so that took a while. It's now installing the songs, as you can see. You can see down here how long that took. Now that all depends really on the speed of the internet connection on the computer you do this on. Most halls don't have particularly fast connections, so it might be better to set this up at home, whoever's setting it up, if you've got a faster internet connection, but that's up to you. Now it's coming up with because I've set this up before and I was fiddling with the settings, it's coming up asking what congregation you want to log in as now. You can do it this way, or actually what's recommended is to have a different user account on the computer for each congregation. But there are pros and cons to each of that. Mainly, if you have a separate user account, so you log when the computer comes up, you choose which congregation to log in as. That way you can each have different options. You can then also have different media folders, so each congregation can sort its own videos and audio and all that itself. I don't know which is easier. I personally like this way because it's simpler. The brother on the sound desk just starts the computer and then clicks one of these. These are the 2 congregations in Bideford where I live. But let's go into one of them. And here we are. This is Soundbox. Now what it's done, this is the music section of Soundbox, and what it's done is automatically picked the middle song and the closing song of the Sunday meeting or the weekend meeting for this week. Obviously it doesn't know the opening song because each brother has a different one for his talk, so the brother on the sound desk needs to find out what that song is and click in there and type the number. Now because I'm using a keyboard and mouse, I have to use my keyboard to type the number, but if you had a touch screen it would come up with a big button sort of keyboard to type the number in easier. But let's just put one in, 45, and as you see, as soon as I type it, it knows what the song is and it's ready. Now what you've got down the bottom here is play background music, which most halls do. When the sound desk operator gets there, he puts some background music on and it plays. The benefit of this also is it's not too quiet in the hall, and it for later on it sorts out when Soundbox stops recording, but we'll go into that later. So that's the music section. If this was tomorrow, Monday, it would assume you're midweek and it would put the songs from the midweek. Now it gets these from the internet, so if the computer at the hall is connected to the internet, it does this automatically, but there's an option to stop that and you have to type them in manually that way. But if you've got an internet connection, which everyone does now, it makes life a lot easier. So let's go through the sections. Record, this is pretty obvious, this will record the meeting, and if you start, it'll start recording the meeting. Simple. What it'll also do is split the file during the middle song, at the middle song, so you get 2 files per meeting. Obviously for the weekend meeting it'd be the public talk as one file and the watchtower as another file, and in the midweek you'd have the 2 sections of the meeting split accordingly where the song is. So that's it, you just click start and off it goes. The automated button here is really useful. That will start recording the meeting as soon as you start the opening song, and it will stop the recording. It will still split it in the middle song, but it will stop the recording as soon as you play the background music at the end of the meeting. So it relies on you, when the closing song finishes, playing some background music at the end, but that can easily be trained. The sound desk operator can easily remember to do that. That's quite a useful feature. It saves them having to worry and remember to do it, but you can do it manually as well. The MP3 tags down here, that you can do that while it's recording or at any time. You can put, if we click that, it's mainly used for the public talk, so you can do the title of the talk and who's giving it. It puts that into the track so that whoever's listening knows who it was. It's quite useful, although you hear it at the announcement at the beginning, but it's still quite useful. The copy section, this is once it's done all the recordings, if a brother wants them for himself, he can bring his own USB stick, or if the hall has got some USB sticks to give out, you put them in and they would appear down here and you can copy them. You can also burn to a CD if that's what's needed, and you can choose the date from the recordings, it keeps them. And if you click there, it opens the folder where the recordings are. That way you can manage them, delete them, whatever you want. We'll go into options later. The timer, this is just brilliant. I can't recommend this enough. This will display the timer on the 3rd screen I mentioned earlier when we were setting it up, and it's a really simple screen where it just shows the time running down. If you saw my earlier video about the features of Soundbox, you'll see what it looks like, and it just works faultlessly. It's brilliant. And obviously you've got the various sections of the meetings here. The Treasure, Ministry and Living are the midweek meeting, and it gets these times automatically. Obviously this is never going to change, and the Ministry section normally doesn't change, but at the beginning of the month you don't have these talks, you have this month's presentations, and it knows that from the date. It's clever enough to know whether it's that this week or not, but you can manually set that if it gets it wrong for some reason. The living section, obviously this is different, not every week but most weeks. Sometimes I have a part 1 and part 2. This week it's just a part 1. There's just one talk this week, and then it's the book study or the congregation Bible study, and then the concluding comments. But you can manually change these. For instance, if the concluding comments needs to include a long letter or a particularly long announcement, you can add more time to this. And here we have a really useful feature, the adaptive timing. So if you get told that this needs more time and you have to add more time, the program will automatically take time away from these here. It'll take more off the Bible study than it will off this, because obviously it's got more time available to it. What it'll also do, if you've got this ticked, if this section and that section run over time, it will adaptively take time off these, including the concluding comments, so that the meeting finishes on time, because that's quite important. You don't want the meeting running over. And even if the brother has said that he needs an extra few minutes for the concluding comments, if these two run overtime, it will still take time off this to allow for that. There's an option in the options to make it two-way, so that if these two run ahead of schedule, then it will give more time to these. It's up to you whether you turn that feature on or not. And obviously the Sunday is much simpler. Talk, watch, style, study. Simple. The miscellaneous section is if you want to time something that isn't normal. If the elders need to time something, or whatever, there's plenty of times where you might want to just time something and it's not a normal meeting. You could time the memorial. I don't see you'd do that, but you could if you wanted. Now, as you saw back here, you've got circuit visit. Now, it doesn't know when your circuit visit is because it's different for every hall. If you tick that, it automatically swaps this around, because obviously you don't have the Bible study when it's the circuit visit, and the concluding comments get shoved up here, and it knows that. What it does, what this also features, which I didn't mention in my previous talk, in the ministry section, when you time these three student talks, if you like, and the Bible reading, once they've finished, their time, when they finish, will stay up on the timer screen, and the timer bar, which if I move this out of the way, oops, not that, no, I can't do that now, but the timer bar, which shrinks down at the top of the screen, will do that whilst this is staying on the screen, so displaying what time is left or if he's gone overtime. That way the brother giving the counsel can see how much time he's got left to give his 1 minute of counsel. It doesn't actually count the minute, and it won't sound the bell, but he knows that when that disappears and moves on to the next talk, it's time to introduce the next talk. It's this useful feature. And you've got a bell, which that's the sound it makes. Quite a nice little sound, but you can change that. Now, media, this is where you place the videos that you want to play that week. And there's two ways of doing this. You can just open the folder and just place the videos in here. You can download them separately and put them in there for that week. And then when you finish, delete them if you want. And it will then display those videos in here. Never mind what the files are called, it gets the correct title from those files, so you know what you're playing. But what this program also has is up here a media calendar. And now if I click calendar folder, you'll see the folder structure is slightly different. It's all in date form now. That way you can, weeks, months ahead of schedule, you can download all the videos for the next few weeks or even months if they're available, and place them in their respective weeks folder. It's got so the 21st is today, but it knows that any date from a Monday on, all the files in that folder will be the midweek videos, and anything Saturday and Sunday dated will be the weekend. You don't normally play videos at the weekend, but if there are times, it knows that. And as you can see back in the program, it's got this weekend, this coming week. Now if I click calendar folder, you'll see it's tomorrow's date, and that knows anything in that folder will be for the midweek meeting. It's just really clever. That way the brother and sound desk can just make sure by going into the correct week, you can go back and forward and get it all sorted ready. The other two sections are websites. If you want to display, if I go back to here, if you want to display a website on the main projector, if you want to demonstrate something, it can be a bit awkward if you're displaying on a projector which is 20 feet away or whatever, to see what you're doing if the brother on the sound desk has to demonstrate something for the brother giving the talk. So what you can do is when you open that, I can't at the moment because I haven't got a display connected for it, but if when you open that you can mirror what it's showing on this screen, you don't interact with this screen, you're interacting with the one in the projector, but you can actually see what you're doing to make it a little bit easier. Another option is to have a fourth screen. You could have it running off that splitter I showed you earlier, which mirrors what's going on the projector, then you can see what you're doing. But that involves quite a lot of screens. I don't know if that's too many. It's up to you anyway. And images and audio is fairly obvious if you want to display an image or play an audio file. What this program does have a feature of is where it can get the pictures from the books and watchtowers that are being used, and you can run that and have it set to run every week or every month, and it will put the images in the folders that you need. I don't know about you, but our congregation doesn't do that anymore. We don't display the images from the watchtower, for instance. I don't know if that's we've been told not to, but we don't. But you can if you want. And the user guide, which I'll show you where to get that, goes into that in more detail. It's a very good user guide actually. So let's briefly go through the options. The first page of the options is Miscellaneous. This is where you update the MP3s or the songs that I showed you earlier. If I click that, you get the same window come up as we saw earlier. This option, Use Dropbox, is quite a useful feature. I don't know if we'll be using it, but it's quite useful if the congregation's got a Dropbox account, they can have it so it copies any recordings you make onto a Dropbox account, and then the brothers you can give that address and share it with them, and they can download it themselves instead of having to bring in USB sticks. It's quite useful. The downside to Dropbox is it's quite expensive to have an account big enough that you can display it, store everything. Although you can get I think it's 5 gigabytes for free, which might be enough for most congregations, but you'll have to remember to stop it copying when it gets full, or delete the old ones when it gets full. That's the downside to Dropbox. Maybe you might add some more features like OneDrive and Google Drive, whatever, in the future. I don't know. Now the settings, there's loads here. I'm not going to go through them one by one, but I'll go through the ones that you might want to change. Autofill songs, that's where it gets it off the internet. Really useful. I don't see why you would turn this off, but if you prefer to put them in manually in the music section, you can turn that feature off. The auto stop background music, well, that's useful. It will stop playing the background music at 3 minutes to the hour, so it knows from the time that the meeting is about to start, so it'll stop it for you. It's quite useful. I'm not sure you need it particularly, but the benefit to it is it'll also stop it at 20 odd minutes after the hour at the end, so if you forget to turn it off, then it will turn itself off. You can have it play the background music as soon as the program opens at the beginning. I don't know if this is good or not, because if there's ever a problem and the program closes halfway through the meeting and then you open it again to get it sorted, it will start playing background music. So yeah, be aware of that. If you know it's stable and it never crashes or never has a problem, then maybe it's a useful thing, but I'm going to leave it off in our case. The snippets feature is where instead of playing a whole song, if there's background music, you'll just play a little bit and then a little bit more. I don't know how long. It doesn't actually stay in the guide how long the snippets are, but it just plays little bits of the songs rather than playing a whole song. And the background volume is the background music volume. Obviously you want that lower than the sound of the music will be once the meeting starts. So it's set at 50%, which seems about right to me. It's nice and quiet, but you can hear it. Bit rate. If you're not sure what this means, just leave it. It defaults to 64, which should be enough, but to me that's a little bit low. So I've put ours up to 128. You don't need to go higher than that, because what you're recording is voice, not music, although there's the music's at the beginning. And if you had music at 128 or less, you do hear some errors and it just sounds a bit wishy-washy. But when it's just voice, it really doesn't matter too much. And the file size is less if you have a smaller bit rate. But I wouldn't go less than 64. Even the voice will start sounding weird. But between 64 and 128 is about right. You don't need to go above 128. CD drive, that's just if you've got 2 CD drives. But let's go through. This is useful. Miscellaneous background music. Instead of playing just songs from the normal music folder, you can download different music. Now this doesn't mean playing the latest pop music. You could, but I wouldn't recommend that. What you could do is download the Kingdom Melodies, which are a little bit different. quite nice, but you will need to remember where to put them. And if I tick that, it says play background music from the Misc folder, and that's when you go to music, when you go here and update MP3s and you click the folder, there's a Misc folder that you can put all the Kingdom melodies in if you want to. I think that's quite nice, but you do have to remember to download them manually and put them there. Now, these are important. Playback and recording device. You need to make sure it's outputting to the correct device. And if you installed that audio device that I showed you earlier, you need to make sure it's showing that here. And the recording device the same. You need to make sure it's showing that device. Obviously, you're going to trial it to make sure it works. So you just click that and choose the correct. This is my computer at home, so I haven't got that device connected, so I don't have the option. This is just my inbuilt sound adapter. But need to make sure that's correct. This is where you control the volume of the bell. If it's a bit too loud or too quiet, you can turn it different. Let's go through this option here, share media. If you didn't do what we had earlier, come up with the two congregations, and you have user accounts on the computer, instead you can choose for them both to share media across into the one folder that we saw earlier. If they're both English congregations, or if there's 3 congregations, or however many, if they're all English speaking and they all use the same videos, that's normally more sensible. Then the computer doesn't get full up with duplicate videos and audio files. But some congregations prefer to have more control over what video is stored. So untick that if you want independent media. If we go down, the user guide explains all these. This is where you add different congregations to the list. If I deleted all that, when I ran the program, it wouldn't come up with anything. It would just load the program, and then I'd have to use the different users on the computer instead. Display names. This is really useful. This is where, instead of it saying display 1, display 2, display 3, and which one's which, I don't know. Obviously display 1 will be this main screen, but it's hard to know. So you can rename them so you know it's output into the correct screen. It's just useful for yourself, just so you know it's outputting correctly. And if you get the names wrong, just remove them and put them in a different order so you know it's correct. Enable Web API. You don't have to have this ticked, but this is really useful if you want to output the timer to a different device. Instead of having a monitor directly connected to the Soundbox computer, you can have an external device like a tablet or phone showing the timer. This is really useful if you want a tablet or phone on the platform itself, so that the congregation can't see it but the brother giving the talk can. Some congregations have even got an old or cheap phone and stuck it onto the rostrum, and you use this feature where it just shows the time. You can't do anything, it just shows it. You can't interact with it, so they can't change the time of their own talk. But it's another way of showing the timer instead of having a separate screen. So you need to have that ticked. I won't go into how to set that up just now, but it's pretty simple, and the user guide does show you. This is the adaptive timer settings, and this is where it says here adaptive time in midweek and Sunday, 2-way. So if it's running ahead of schedule, it'll add time to the remaining talks. If it's running behind schedule, it will take time away from the remaining talks. You can choose to have it just one way, so it only affects the final talks if you're running overtime. If you're ahead of schedule, they don't get any extra time. That's up to you. I don't know, I think one way would probably be better. My own personal opinion, I don't like it when brothers pad out a talk just to fill the time. It seems to be obvious to me they're doing that, and it sort of drags the meeting, but it's up to you how you want to set that. And again, on Sunday, if the public talk runs over or is too short, it will either add or take away time from the watchtower to make sure the meeting finishes on time. Automatic timer bell. This is a funny one because the guidelines are that we are strict with the time, and then as soon as the time runs out, it needs to be notified. So you can tick that so that this is only for the student talks, or whatever they're called, the midweek sections. It's not for every talk. Yes, I know we need to be strict, but if they're finishing, if they're putting their stuff away and getting off the platform, and then the bell rings as they're getting off, that seems a bit mean to me. But it's up to you. You need to make sure of your local elders what their guidelines are. Set meeting timers, that's what we showed you earlier. It automatically sorts itself out. Display next song number and the time of day, these two are what it shows on the timer screen when there's not actually a timer running. It'll just show a clock, if this one, and what the next song will be, which is useful for the brother giving the announcements. He can look up, and if he doesn't know what the song will be, he can just look up and it'll tell him, which is quite useful. And this progress bar is, as well as the time going down, as we showed you in the other video, it goes from green to yellow and then red. You also get a bar at the top of the screen shrinking down to show you, so it's another visual aid. This enable clock time server, this is a bit like the web API I showed you earlier. This is so you can have a different device, like a phone or tablet, that a brother can control the timer functions from there, instead of the sound operator doing it. I think this is brilliant because the sound operators sometimes can't cope with having too many things to do. So if you've got someone else in the hall doing it for you, it means you're spreading the jobs out, so you get more brothers doing work, which is a really good thing. You get a younger brother perhaps to do it, which is good. And also it alleviates some of the stress from the sound operator. To set that one up, I'll go through in a moment. But I think that's it, yes. This show time on the home page, this is this here. You can choose to have that display or not. If you're going to have the clock time server and a brother operating it from his seat, then maybe you could turn that off. It won't take an effect until I close and open the program again. But that's it. So that's the program. Now, to set up the server, you need to do two things. You need to download the app for the device you're going to be using, and then set up the computer so it allows the input from those apps. Now, first of all, you need to let's go to the website where you can get the app. It's a bit of a longer website, this one. It's www.bennett. Oh, it's already filled it in for me. bennettfamily.org.uk/soundboxtimer.html. You have to type all that, I'm afraid, otherwise it won't find it. I'll put the link in the description. So if we go there, this is a brother who's done this. Again, just like Soundbox, he's done it out of love, and didn't want any money for it. I think it's just brilliant. And as you see here, you can either download the app manually if your device doesn't have the Google Play Store or the Amazon App Store, or you can go to the Google Play Store or the Amazon App Store. The benefit of these two is that it will update itself when it gets updated. As you can see, there's been a few updates. I don't know if you'll update it again because it seems to work perfectly. But so you need to do that. You can either do it from this website by going to this website from the device and tapping on these, or just search for it in the app stores. There's no iOS or Apple version yet. I don't know if he's developing it or not, but I don't see the need. So that's how you get the app. But then you need to make sure the computer can accept the input from the app. It may work for you. Try it first. If it doesn't work, if it says it can't connect, the way you sort this out is to go to the firewall settings. Now, the easiest way to do this is to press the Windows button on the keyboard, or press the search button on your taskbar if you've got search or Cortana or whatever you've got set up in Windows 10. If you've got Windows 8 or Windows 7, the easiest way, and this works across all, is to just press the Windows key on your keyboard and then start typing firewall. So Windows Firewall. In fact, you don't even have to finish typing it because it comes up at the top here. You click that and this opens the firewall settings. A bit scary looking. Most of the time you don't even look at this because it's set up automatically. But all you really need to do is go to inbound rules and then new rule. Now, I've already set this up, so if I click name and go down to, you'll see Soundbox. There it is. If I delete that and show you how I set it up, make sure to delete, yes. Right, new rule. So just make sure it's on inbound, not outbound. Go to new rule, go to port, and then next, and then leave it on TCP and specify local ports. Now it's 8095 is the port you need to put in, and then click next. Make sure it's on allow, click next again, leave those ticked, click next again, and give it a name. Soundbox, whatever, you can call it what you like, call it Fred if you like, doesn't matter. Finish. As you can see, if I refreshed, it's probably down the bottom now. It would appear then in this list of rules. That way it opens a little hole in effect so the app can talk to the program. The program needs to be running, so if it's not connecting, check the Soundbox program is running on the computer, and that way you can control it. And that is it. There's nothing more you need to do. It just works. The hard bit about this all is getting the hardware set up in the first place. But there should be a brother who knows what he's doing in your hall, but if not, refer to this video, or there's plenty of guides. If you need any more information about Soundbox, the user guide on his website, or if you press help from the application itself, is really well written. He's covered everything in there. But this video is to show you some of the things a bit simpler if you prefer to watch videos for it. But that's it. Thank you for watching, and if you like this video, click the buttons down below, or not, doesn't matter. And that's it. Let me know if you need any questions answered, or go to the brother who's made the Soundbox program itself. Okay, bye for now.